At my son's wedding, my own daughter-in-law kicked me out. I didn't let it slide. Humiliated in front of everyone, I left in silence, but with all the contracts in my name. I cancelled everything: venue, catering, flowers, music, honeymoon, and left them with the I do stuck in their throats. What was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives turned into a scandal no one will forget. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Helen Mitchell looked at her reflection in the mirror while adjusting the pearl necklace around her neck. At 58, her face carried the marks of a life dedicated to others. She sighed deeply as she heard her cell phone ring once again. It was Ryan, her only son, calling for the fourth time that morning. Mum, Caitlin is freaking out because the florist said she can't get the white peonies she wants. You need to fix this. You know someone who can get them, don't you? Helen closed her eyes for a moment before responding in the gentle voice she always used with her son. Ryan, I'm heading out for a meeting with the catering manager. I'll call. Mrs. Margaret at the downtown flower shop. She's always helped me with special arrangements. Great, Mum. Text Caitlin as soon as you sort it out. She's really stressed. The call ended without a thank you. Helen put her phone in her purse and took a deep breath. For the past 6 months, since Ryan had announced his engagement to Caitlin Anderson, daughter of a successful real estate businessman, Helen's life had transformed into an endless sequence of tasks and demands related to the wedding. The event, scheduled to take place in 2 weeks at the most prestigious venue in town, was being entirely financed by Helen. Despite Caitlin's father being a wealthy man, the tradition that the bride's family would bear the costs had been subtly replaced by a silent expectation that Helen, as such a generous and capable mother, would assume all expenses. You have that special touch for these things, Caitlin had said in a sweet tone the first time they broached the subject. At the bank, Helen checked her expense spreadsheet. Once more, the numbers made her dizzy. She had already invested practically all her savings in this wedding, money she had saved during years of working as an administrator at a mid-sized company, from which she had retired just 2 years ago. Miss Mitchell, everything okay? Asked the manager, a young man in an impeccable suit. Yes, Charles. Just making sure everything is in order for the final catering payment. Of course, it's all set. Your transfer has already been processed. Are you sure you don't want to split this amount into more installments? It's a considerable sum. Helen smiled, feeling the weight of that suggestion. No, thank you. I prefer to have everything paid at once. Upon leaving the bank, she received a message from Caitlin with photos of an exclusive resort in the Maldives. Found the perfect place for our honeymoon. 14 nights, just think. Ryan said you'll love giving us this as a gift. Kisses, mum-in-law. Helen felt her stomach tighten. She hadn't mentioned anything about paying for a 2-week international honeymoon. This would be another astronomical expense that wasn't in her plans. That night, while organizing receipts in a carefully labeled folder, Helen heard the doorbell. It was Vivian, her friend of decades, bringing a homemade cake and a concerned look. Still working on that? Helen, you look exhausted, Vivian commented, putting the kettle on. Just organizing some documents. The wedding's almost here, Helen responded with a fragile smile. Vivian sat across from her, holding her hands. And how much have you already spent on this wedding? For God's sake, your son is 32, works at a multinational, and the bride is the daughter of a rich man. Why are you funding everything alone? Helen looked away. You know how Ryan is. Since his father left us when he was 8, I've always tried to compensate for his absence, and now he's finally building his own family. And using you as a bank, Vivian completed bluntly. Friend, this isn't compensation, it's exploitation. When was the last time he thanked you for anything? A heavy silence settled in the kitchen. Helen couldn't remember. The phone rang again. It was Ryan. Mom, Caitlin is here with me and we're thinking, what do you think about changing the menu? That salmon appetizer we tried is too common. Caitlin's cousin went to a wedding where they served foie gras with cranberry reduction. Sounds much more sophisticated. Ryan, we confirmed the menu 3 weeks ago. The catering team has already purchased the ingredients, Helen explained patiently. "Mom, these are just details. I'm sure you can fix this. It's just a matter of paying a bit more, right?" Vivian, who was listening to the conversation, rolled her eyes. After hanging up, Helen massaged her temples. "He's just nervous about the wedding. That's normal." "What's normal is thanking someone when they do something for you. What's normal is recognizing effort and sacrifice," Vivian retorted. "Helen, when did you become just a means for others to get what they want?" The question hung in the air like an uncomfortable ghost. The next morning, Helen received an email from the decorator. The new budget, with the changes requested by Caitlin the night before, had increased by 30%. Another unplanned expense. At this point, Helen was already considering using part of her emergency fund to cover the additional costs that emerged daily. At lunch, she met with Ryan and Caitlin for the ceremony rehearsal. The venue was stunning, with an impeccable garden and a hall adorned with classic columns, the kind of place Helen could never afford for herself, but was now financing for her son. "Mom, I talked to the wedding planner, and we decided it would be better for you to enter before the bridesmaids and groomsmen, not with me as we had planned," Ryan said while checking messages on his phone. "But I thought you wanted to walk with me," Helen replied, feeling a tightness in her chest. "It's just more aesthetic this way," Caitlin intervened, without taking her eyes off her own reflection in a compact mirror. "You understand, don't you, Helen? The visual harmony of the ceremony is fundamental." Helen nodded in silence. Once again, she swallowed her disappointment and smiled. As the rehearsal continued, the wedding planner positioned her at the back, almost hidden among floral arrangements. "I'll stand here, very discreet," the man explained. Discreet. The word echoed in her mind. Was that how everyone saw her? The discreet woman who doesn't bother anyone, who only provides and facilitates without ever being really seen? At the end of the rehearsal, when everyone gathered to discuss the final details, Helen tried to suggest a small tribute to Ryan's deceased grandparents, a photo of them in a special corner of the decoration. "Oh, Mom, for God's sake, that will completely break the minimalist concept we chose," Ryan replied, irritated. "But your grandfather practically raised you after your father passed. I thought it would be a nice gesture." "Helen," Caitlin interrupted with an artificial smile, "we appreciate your suggestions, but we've already finalized all the aesthetic details. We don't want morbid elements on our special day, understand?" Helen felt as if she had been slapped. Morbid elements? Is that how they viewed the memory of her family? That night, alone at home, Helen revisited old photo albums. Ryan as a child, smiling in her lap. Ryan as a teenager, receiving his first car, a gift from her after years of saving. Ryan as an adult, increasingly distant, increasingly less grateful. At the bottom of a drawer, she found a yellowed letter her father had written before he passed. "Never let them take away your value, daughter. Your kindness is not weakness, unless you allow it to be abused." Helen fell asleep with those words echoing in her mind, not knowing that, in a few days, she would be forced to choose between continuing to be invisible or finally reclaiming her place in the world. The sun had barely risen when Helen woke up to a bank notification. A transfer of $15,000 had been made from her account to a luxury jewelry store. She didn't remember authorizing such a transaction. Confused, she checked the app and discovered that the transfer had been made through a joint account she had maintained with Ryan since he was a teenager. "My God," she whispered to herself. It had been years since she had used that account. She had even forgotten about its existence. Upon checking the history, a wave of nausea hit her. In the last 8 months, dozens of transfers had been made from that account. Expensive restaurants, designer stores, weekend trips, and more recently, wedding expenses she had supposedly agreed to pay. Her phone rang. It was Vivian. "Have you seen your daughter-in-law's Instagram?" her friend asked without preamble. "No, why?" She posted photos of a last-minute dinner last night for the wedding party, a dinner for 30 people at the magnificent, that super expensive rooftop restaurant. The caption says, "We thank our dear Helen for the surprise gift for our special wedding party." Helen felt her blood freeze. She had neither authorized nor been informed about this dinner. "Vivian, I need to hang up. I'll call you back." With trembling hands, Helen navigated to Caitlin's profile. There were the photos, a luxurious dinner with expensive flower arrangements, imported champagne, and an exclusive tasting menu. In the images, Ryan and Caitlin smiled, surrounded by elegant friends. Helen didn't appear in any of the photos, despite the caption crediting her for the generous gift. While staring at the images, a new notification appeared. Another transfer, this time to a yacht rental company. The description read, "First installment, exclusive honeymoon." Helen dropped her phone on the floor. The feeling wasn't just one of financial betrayal, but of a profound violation of trust. The phone rang again. It was Ryan. "Mom, Caitlin is concerned about your silence. Did you see the dinner photos? Everything turned out wonderful. Everyone loved your gift." Helen breathed deeply, trying to control her voice. "Ryan, I didn't know about any dinner. I didn't authorize that expense." A brief silence on the other end of the line was followed by a carefree laugh. "Oh, Mom, but we talked about this last week, remember, when you said you wanted to do something special for the wedding party. Caitlin just took the initiative to spare you the trouble of organizing everything." "No, Ryan, we never talked about this, and I just saw transfers from my account that I didn't authorize, including one for a yacht rental." Another silence, more tense this time. "Oh, that we're planning the honeymoon, you know. We found an incredible package. It was going to be a surprise for you to see the complete itinerary, but since you found out, you always said you wanted to give us an unforgettable honeymoon, didn't you?" The manipulation was so blatant that Helen felt a wave of indignation she had never experienced before. "Ryan, I never said that, and you don't have authorization to use my account. Mom, it's our joint account. I've always had access. Since you gave me the card when I was 18, I don't understand why you're making a storm in a teacup now. These are just financial details." "Financial details? Ryan, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, money I saved my entire life." "And what did you save it for if not to help your only son? What are you going to do with that money? Travel alone, buy expensive clothes that no one will see?" His voice took on an acidic tone that Helen knew well, the same tone he used as a teenager to emotionally manipulate her. "Ryan, we need to talk about this in person. I'm coming to your apartment now." "No, Mom. We're busy with preparations. We have a meeting with the DJ in half an hour. We can resolve this after the wedding." The call ended before Helen could respond. On impulse, she grabbed her purse and drove to her son's apartment, a penthouse in an upscale neighborhood that she had helped finance as a graduation gift 5 years ago. The doorman announced her arrival, and after a few minutes she was authorized to go up. When the elevator door opened directly into the apartment's living room, Helen found Ryan and Caitlin sitting on the couch, with clearly irritated expressions. "Mom, I said we were busy," Ryan began, without getting up to greet her. "This couldn't." "Wait," Helen replied, walking to the coffee table where she placed her phone with the bank statements open. "I need you to explain this to me." Caitlin rolled her eyes and stood up. "Helen, with all due respect, we're just days away from the wedding. This is not the time for discussions about money. You always knew weddings are expensive." "Caitlin, we're not talking about the costs we agreed upon. We're talking about expenses that were never discussed with me and transfers made without my knowledge." Ryan stood up, visibly irritated. "Mom, whenever I needed money, you gave it. Always. Since Dad abandoned us, you made a point of giving me the best of everything. Why now, right at the most important moment of my life, are you counting pennies?" Helen felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Abandoned? Her ex-husband had died in an accident when Ryan was 8. She had never hidden this from him. "Ryan, your father didn't abandon us, Whatever," he interrupted, gesturing impatiently. "The point is that you've always wanted to compensate for his absence by being the perfect mother, and now you're going to ruin everything because of money." Caitlin approached, assuming a conciliatory tone that sounded deeply fake. "Helen, dear, we understand that you're under a lot of pressure, It's normal for mothers to become emotionally unstable close to their children's weddings. Perhaps you should consult a therapist. I have an aunt who went through something similar. Helen looked at the two of them, incredulous. They were trying to make her believe that she was the problem. I'm not emotionally unstable. I'm being robbed by my own son. A heavy silence fell over the apartment. Ryan narrowed his eyes, his expression hardening. So that's it? You're going to turn my wedding into a drama about you. I always knew that deep down you were jealous of my happiness. Jealous? Helen repeated, stunned by the absurd accusation. Yes, jealous. A lonely woman, with no prospect of a new relationship, watching her son build the family you couldn't maintain. The words hit Helen like stabs. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Caitlin seized the moment to approach Ryan, placing her hand on his shoulder in a theatrical gesture of support. Maybe we should give Helen some time. She's clearly not in the emotional condition to discuss practical matters right now. Ryan nodded, as if his fiancée had just presented the wisest solution. Mom, go home, rest. When you're calmer, we can talk. At that moment, something broke inside Helen. Years of submission, of giving up her own desires, of swallowing insults disguised as concern, everything culminated in a crystalline clarity. Do you two really believe you can spend my money without authorization and then treat me like I'm crazy when I question it? Caitlin gave an exasperated sigh. Helen, frankly, this dramatization is unnecessary. We all know you want the best for Ryan. You always have. So why this fuss now if not to draw attention? Helen stared at her future daughter-in-law, seeing for the first time the skilled manipulator behind the calculated smile. You're right, Caitlin. I've always wanted the best for Ryan, and that's why I'm not going to allow him to exploit me or treat me like a walking ATM anymore. Ryan laughed with disdain. Now you're the victim. After everything we did to include you in the wedding? Did you know Caitlin's mother wanted to organize everything herself? But we insisted on giving you this important role. Giving me? You didn't give me anything, you used me. Enough, shouted Ryan, hitting the table. If that's how you see things, maybe it's better if you don't come to the wedding at all. Helen felt as if the world had stopped. Her own son was kicking her out of the wedding she was financing. Caitlin, realizing the situation had escalated too much, tried to intervene. Ryan, calm down. Your mother is just confused. No, Caitlin. I'm tired of this emotional manipulation. If she thinks we're exploiting her, then we don't need her there. Helen looked at her son, searching for any trace of the boy she had raised with so much love. She found nothing but a spoiled and selfish adult. You're right, Ryan. You don't need me there. Picking up her purse, Helen walked to the elevator with a silent dignity that surprised even herself. Before the doors closed, she looked at her son one last time. Tomorrow I'm going to the bank to close our joint account, and I suggest you start calling the wedding vendors to renegotiate the contracts, because from now on, every cent you spend will be from your own pockets. The elevator doors closed, leaving behind a stunned Ryan and a pale Caitlin. As she descended to the ground floor, Helen felt a mixture of pain and relief. The pain of realizing her son had become someone she barely recognized, and the relief of finally breaking the invisible chains that kept her trapped in a cycle of emotional and financial exploitation. As she left the building, the afternoon sun hit her face. For the first time in a long time, Helen breathed deeply, feeling the weight of decades slowly being lifted from her shoulders. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time it would be her own path. The morning light was coming through the curtain gaps when Helen opened her eyes. For a moment, she lay there, watching the golden rays dance on the ceiling. The feeling was strange, a mixture of deep pain and a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. Her cell phone hadn't stopped ringing since the previous night. Dozens of missed calls from Ryan and Caitlin, followed by messages that alternated between desperate pleas and veiled threats. She didn't respond to any of them. Instead, she got up with determination and prepared a strong coffee. While the water boiled, she opened her laptop and began to make a meticulous list of all the wedding vendors. Dr. Claire Miller, attorney, she typed at the top of a new document. It was the first name on her contact list for that day. At 9 o'clock sharp, Helen was sitting in the elegant office of the attorney, a middle-aged woman with perceptive eyes and a confident posture. "So, Mrs. Mitchell, what can I do for you today?" asked Claire after the initial introductions. Helen took a deep breath and placed on the table an organized folder with bank statements, contracts, and payment receipts. "I need legal guidance to cancel a series of contracts and prevent my son from continuing to use my bank accounts without authorization." The attorney examined the documents carefully, occasionally raising her eyebrows. "From what I'm seeing, you fully financed a luxurious wedding. All contracts are in your name, all. Payments came from your accounts, and now your son has uninvited you from the ceremony." Helen nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "Is it possible to cancel everything?" Claire adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Helen. "Legally, yes, you are the contractor. You have every right to cancel the services. There will be penalties in some cases depending on the terms of each contract, but nothing compared to the total amount that would be spent." The attorney paused, leaning slightly forward. "But I need to ask, are you sure you want to do this? The emotional and family consequences could be severe." Helen stared at the untouched coffee cup in front of her. "Doctor, for the past 10 years, I have sacrificed my financial peace, my time, and my dignity for a son who sees me only as a means to achieve his goals. Yesterday, he looked me in the eyes and accused me of wanting to ruin his happiness because I'm jealous of his relationship." Claire nodded, understanding. "I see, and what about the joint account you mentioned?" "I opened it when Ryan was 18, so he could have access to an allowance during college. After he graduated and started working, I completely forgot about that account. Apparently, he never stopped using it." The attorney made some notes. "We'll take immediate measures. First, I'll prepare a document to close the joint account. Then we'll begin notifying the vendors. As you are the contractor, the process will be relatively simple." While the attorney typed on her computer, Helen felt her cell phone vibrate again. A message from Ryan. "Mom, for God's sake, we need to talk. Caitlin is out of control. You can't do this to us." Helen showed the message to Claire. "They already know?" "Probably the bank notified them about the account closure. Ryan always receives alerts about transactions." The attorney smiled sympathetically. "Mrs. Mitchell, I suggest you don't respond to any contact for now. In situations like this, any communication can be distorted and used against you." For the first time in many years, Helen felt that there was someone genuinely on her side, someone who saw her as a person with valid rights and feelings, not just as a silent provider. In the following hours, Helen and Claire worked methodically. Calls were made, emails sent, documents signed. With each cancelled contract, Helen felt a mixture of sadness and liberation. The catering manager said the refund will be 60% of the value, according to the contractual clause. "It's still a considerable amount," Claire informed, hanging up the phone. "And what about the venue?" "That's more complicated. Their policy provides only a 30% refund for cancellations less than a month before the event. But I managed to negotiate 45% considering the circumstances." Helen nodded, grateful for the attorney's competence. Around 4 in the afternoon, when the main contracts had already been dealt with, the receptionist announced an unexpected visit. "Mrs. Mitchell, there's a young man insisting on seeing you. He says he's your son." Helen exchanged glances with Claire. "Would you like me to ask him to leave?" asked the attorney. After a moment of reflection, Helen replied, "No, I'll talk to him, but I'd like you to be present." Ryan entered the office like a storm. His face was red, his eyes bloodshot, his hair disheveled, an image very distant from the always impeccable executive. "Mom, have you lost your mind? Cancelling the wedding? Do you have any idea what you're doing to us?" Claire intervened immediately. "Mr. Mitchell, I suggest you calm down. Your mother is exercising her legal right as the contractor of the services." Ryan shot a withering look at the attorney. "And who are you to meddle in family matters?" "I am Mrs. Mitchell's attorney, and I'm here to ensure that her rights are respected." Ryan turned to his mother, his voice oscillating between anger and desperation. "Mom, you can't do this. We've already invited more than 200 people. Caitlin's family, my colleagues, all our friends. Are you going to humiliate us like this?" Helen looked at her son, feeling a surprising calm. "Ryan, for years you've used my account without authorization. You planned an extravagant honeymoon without consulting me. You organized expensive dinners in my name. And when I questioned it, you kicked me out of the wedding. Who's humiliating whom? That was in the heat of the moment. You know how I get when I'm stressed. Of course I want you at the wedding. Of course you do. Now that you've realized that without me there will be no wedding." Ryan ran his hands through his hair, visibly frustrated. "What do you want, Mom? A formal apology? Do you want Caitlin to come here and beg for forgiveness? Tell us what we need to do to fix this." Helen felt a pang of sadness. Even now, Ryan couldn't see the real problem. For him, it all came down to finding the right way to manipulate her into returning to the previous situation. "I don't want anything, Ryan. I just want to end this unhealthy cycle where you exploit me and I allow it." "Exploit? Mom, you always said you wanted to see me happy, that you would give everything for me." "And I did. For years I gave everything. My time, my money, my peace. And what did I receive in return? A son who treats me like an ATM and discards me when I question his abuses." Ryan changed tactics. His voice suddenly choked up. "Mom, you're deeply hurting me. After everything we've been through together, how can you talk to me like this? I'm your only son." Helen felt the familiar impulse to yield, to calm, to sacrifice herself to restore peace. It was an old pattern, deeply rooted, but something had changed inside her. "Yes, you are my only son, and precisely because of that, I can no longer allow you to continue on this path. It's not healthy for you, nor for me." "What does that mean?" Ryan asked, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "It means the wedding is cancelled, at least in the way it was planned. If you and Caitlin want to get married, you'll have to do it with your own resources." Ryan stared at his mother for long seconds, his face a mask of disbelief. "You'll regret this," he finally said, his voice cold. "When you're alone, without family, without anyone to take care of you in old age, you'll remember this day." Helen felt the blow of those words but remained firm. "It's possible, but I prefer to face that possibility than continue living as I have been living." Ryan abruptly turned and left, slamming the door. The silence that followed was heavy. Claire approached Helen and gently placed her hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" Helen breathed deeply, surprising herself with the absence of tears. "I will be." At the end of the day, when all cancellations had been processed and documents organized, Helen left the attorney's office feeling strangely light, despite the pain. "We'll keep in touch, Mrs. Mitchell. Any problem, I'm at your disposal," said Claire, accompanying her to the door. "Thank you for everything. Not just for the legal service, but for listening to me and treating me with respect." The attorney smiled. "You took a very brave step today. Few people have the strength to break abusive cycles, especially when they involve such intimate relationships, as between mother and son." On the way home, Helen stopped at a small coffee shop. She ordered a cappuccino and sat by the window, watching the movement on the street. It was strange, but for the first time in many years she felt present in the moment, aware of herself as a person with her own desires and needs, not just as Ryan's mother. Her cell phone vibrated with a notification. It was a message from Vivian. "How are you?" Helen smiled and replied, taking the first steps in a new direction. Night fell over the city as Helen walked slowly home. Tomorrow would be another day, with new challenges and probably more manipulation attempts, but something fundamental had changed. The woman returning home was no longer the same one who, for years, had nullified herself in the name of a love that was poorly understood and even more poorly reciprocated. Upon arriving home, Helen opened the windows, letting the night breeze refresh the environment. On the living room table, she found a photo frame with an old picture. She and Ryan when he was about 10 years old, smiling at a picnic in the park. Simpler, more truthful times. Instead of giving into nostalgia, Helen put the photo in a drawer. Not to forget it, but to make room for new memories, new possibilities, a new version of herself that was just beginning to discover. 3 weeks passed since the wedding cancellation. Helen had turned off her social media after a flood of messages, from relatives and acquaintances, some criticizing her cruel decision, others asking for explanations. The version circulating, spread by Ryan and Caitlin, was that of an unbalanced mother who, overcome by jealousy and resentment, had sabotaged her son's wedding out of pure malice. That Saturday morning, Helen was having her coffee on the porch when the intercom rang. It was Mark, her brother-in-law, brother of her late husband. "Helen, we need to talk," he said when she answered. "I'm worried about you." Hesitantly, she authorized his entry. Mark had always been distant, appearing only on commemorative dates, and even then, rarely. That he was here now, on his own initiative, was at least curious. "You look well," he commented, visibly surprised to see her. "Ryan said you were having some kind of nervous breakdown." Helen indicated the sofa for him to sit down and offered coffee, which was refused. "As you can see, I'm perfectly fine." Mark adjusted himself uncomfortably in his seat. "Helen, what happened? The entire family is shocked. Canceling your own son's wedding? This doesn't seem like something you would do." Calmly, Helen explained the situation. The unauthorized transfers, the extravagant expenses, the emotional manipulations, the constant ingratitude, and finally, the episode where Ryan kicked her out of the wedding. Mark listened in silence, his face gradually assuming an expression of understanding. "I didn't know," he murmured finally. "Ryan told a completely different story." "I imagine he did." "But Helen, he's your son. Maybe with a little time you can reconcile. Family should stick together no matter what." Helen observed her brother-in-law with a new look. She realized that this was the mentality that had kept her trapped for so long, the idea that family ties justified any abuse, any exploitation. "Mark, you know that I practically raised Ryan alone after your brother passed. I dedicated my life to him, and in return I was treated like a walking wallet, useful only when I could provide something material." "He's young, Helen. He makes mistakes." "He's 32. He's not a rebellious teenager. He's an adult who consciously exploited his own mother and, when confronted, reacted with cruelty." Mark seemed genuinely confused, as if the idea of a mother establishing boundaries was an alien concept. "And now, are you going to stop talking to each other forever?" Helen sighed, feeling a pang of sadness. "The door is open for Ryan when he wants to have a real relationship with me, not based on financial interest or manipulation, but on mutual respect." After Mark's departure, Helen decided to walk around the neighborhood. Autumn painted the streets with golden and red tones. She breathed the fresh air, feeling a growing inner peace. In the park near her house, she found a group of women practicing Tai Chi. She stood watching for a few minutes, admiring the gracefulness of the movements. "Want to join us?" invited one of the women, noticing her interest. Helen hesitated. How long had it been since she had done something just for pleasure? How long had it been since she had allowed herself new experiences? "I don't know the movements," she replied, unsure. "We all start not knowing," smiled the woman. "I'm Teresa, the group's instructor." That morning, Helen participated in her first Tai Chi class. The movements were challenging for her body, unaccustomed to exercise, but there was something deeply comforting in the practice. At the end of the class, she exchanged contacts with Teresa and 2 other women from the group. It was strange but good to talk with people who knew nothing about her family drama, who saw her just as Helen, not as Ryan's mother. Days later, Helen received a notification from the bank. An attempt to transfer to her old joint account had been refused. Soon after, her cell phone rang. It was Ryan. "Mom, we need to talk. I've been thinking a lot and I recognize that I made mistakes. Can we meet?" Helen felt her heart accelerate. It was what she had been waiting for during weeks, a sign of repentance, an opportunity for reconciliation. "Of course, Ryan. How about coffee tomorrow?" They arranged to meet at a neutral coffee shop, a public place where both could feel comfortable. Ryan arrived punctually, something rare. He looked worn out, with deep, dark circles and an air of defeat that Helen had never seen in him before. "Thank you for coming," he began after they ordered their coffees. "The last few weeks have been difficult." Helen nodded, waiting for him to continue. "Caitlin and I broke up," he revealed finally. "After the wedding was cancelled, things quickly fell apart. She blamed me for not being able to control you. She said I should have ensured you wouldn't cancel anything." Helen felt a tightness in her chest. Even now, Ryan spoke as if the problem was her, not their behavior. "I'm sorry about the breakup," she said sincerely. "I know you had feelings for her." Ryan gave a bitter smile. "Actually, I don't know what I felt anymore. When the money ran out, I realized that many things between us also ended. She expected a lifestyle that I couldn't provide alone." There was a moment of uncomfortable silence. Helen observed her son, waiting for him to mention the financial abuses, the manipulations, the episode of her expulsion. But nothing came. "And how are you feeling, Mom?" he finally asked, as if they had just gone through a trivial misunderstanding. Helen breathed deeply. "I'm good, Ryan. Better than I've been in a long time, actually." He seemed surprised. "Really? I thought you were, suffering with all this." "I suffered, of course, but I also found a clarity I didn't have before. I started taking better care of myself, doing things that give me pleasure." Ryan stirred his coffee with the spoon, visibly uncomfortable. "That's good," he murmured. Then, after a pause, "Mum, I was thinking, that apartment is too big just for me, the rent is expensive, and with all the expenses I had with the wedding, I'm kind of tight financially. Maybe I could stay at your house for a while, just until I reorganize." And there it was, the real reason for the meeting, the real regret, not for having hurt her, but for having lost access to her resources. Helen felt a wave of disappointment, but also of clarity. That moment crystallized everything she had learned in the last few weeks. "Ryan, my house has only one bedroom. It wouldn't be practical for both of us. I can sleep on the couch. I don't mind. I just need some time to get back on my feet." Helen took a sip of her coffee, organizing her thoughts. "I think it would be better for you to look for other alternatives, maybe a smaller apartment in a more affordable neighborhood." Ryan frowned, the familiar expression of discontent appearing on his face. "But you're denying me help. After everything I've been through." "I'm not denying help, Ryan. I'm establishing boundaries. They're different things." "Boundaries? I'm your son." "Yes, you're my son, not my financial responsibility. You're an adult with a career, education, health. You have all the tools to support yourself." Ryan pushed the cup away, irritated. "So that's it? You simply turned your back on me at the moment I need you most?" Helen remained calm, recognizing the pattern of manipulation. "Ryan, I'm here, talking to you. I didn't turn my back. But I'm also not going to return to the unhealthy pattern we had before, where you used me as an inexhaustible source of resources." "Use? You? My God, Mom, what a horrible thing to say. I love you." "I love you too, Ryan. That's why our relationship needs to change, so we can have a love based on respect, not on exploitation." He stood up abruptly, knocking over the chair. "You've changed. You're not the mother I knew anymore." Helen looked at him with a mixture of sadness and determination. "You're right, I'm not. And I hope that one day you'll understand that this change was necessary, not just for me, but for both of us." Ryan left the coffee shop without looking back, leaving Helen alone with her thoughts. She didn't cry. Instead, she calmly finished her coffee, left a generous tip, and walked to the park where she had met Teresa. The next day, Helen woke up early and, following an impulse, called Vivian. "Remember that trip we always dreamed of taking to the south? How about going on the next holiday?" Vivian was momentarily speechless, then laughed. "Helen Mitchell suggesting a spontaneous trip? Who are you and what have you done with my friend?" Let's just say I'm getting to know a new version of myself. In the following weeks, Helen completely reorganized her life. She enrolled in a photography course, an old passion she had always postponed. She officially joined the Tai Chi group. She revamped her wardrobe, trading neutral and discreet clothes for more colorful pieces that better reflected her personality. A month after the conversation with Ryan, she received a letter. The thin paper contained only a few handwritten lines. "Mum, I bought a used car and rented a smaller apartment. I'm working on a new project that might work out. I hope you're well. Ryan." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of past mistakes. But it was a beginning, the start of an independent life without the financial crutch that Helen had always represented. She put the letter in a drawer, neither sad nor exultant, just aware that some journeys are long and winding, and that maturation, both hers and Ryan's, was an ongoing process. That night, while arranging old photos in a new album, Helen found an image of herself at 20, before marriage, before Ryan, before all the responsibilities she had assumed. In the portrait, she smiled confidently at the camera, her eyes bright with possibilities. Helen placed the photo on the first page of the new album. It was a reminder of what she had been, and what she could be again. Not in the same way, of course, as time and experiences had transformed her, but with the same essence, the same authenticity. The next morning, while having her coffee on the porch, she received a message from Teresa. "Special class today in the park. Don't miss it. We'll have a surprise." Helen smiled. Life went on, with new friendships, new interests, new opportunities. The relationship with Ryan remained complicated and would probably never be perfect. But for the first time in decades, her identity wasn't exclusively tied to motherhood or sacrifice. In the hallway mirror, she adjusted the pearl necklace, the same one she had worn on the day when everything began to change, but now it adorned a different woman. A woman who had learned after years of silence and submission the most important of lessons, that true love, whether for a child, a partner, or oneself, should never require the annulment of one's own being. As she left home, Helen breathed in the morning air. The sky was extraordinarily blue, the trees swayed gently with the breeze, and ahead of her stretched an entire day of possibilities, a day that was entirely her own. The end. Dear listeners, we hope that Helen's journey has touched your hearts. To continue on this journey of self-discovery and rebirth, we've prepared a special playlist with equally moving stories that explore complex family ties and personal rediscovery. Find this special selection by clicking on the left side of the screen. If Helen's story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique narratives that make us reflect on life's challenges and beauties. And you, have you gone through a moment of personal transformation?